Hello everyone. In today's session we will discuss about company. Now first let us see what is meant by company. Now another name of company is joint stock company. Now let us see its meaning. A joint stock company is an artificial person. Artificial person means it is not natural human being like us. It is created by people. Okay, then created by law means through law it is created by people with a fixed capital. Now the capital of a company will be fixed, divisible into transferable shares means the capital of a company can be divided into small equal parts, and those parts are nothing but shares. Now in company those shares are transferable means you can transfer your shares to someone else. Then another feature is with perpetual succession means if some of the members of the company dies, then they will be succeeded by another or someone else. Then and a common seal. Common seal means every human being they have unique or different signature. Just like that, a company also they have their own signature, and that is nothing but known as common seal. Now the company has a separate legal entity means even though it is a group of people, but company they have their separate legal entity. They have their own individual identity in the eyes of law. It must be compulsorily registered. Now we saw that in partnership it was not mandatory whether they want to get registration or not, but in company they are liable to get registered. The company is owned by shareholders who subscribe for its shares. Now I told you that capital is divided into small equal parts known as shares. Now the people who owns those shares are no one but shareholders. They subscribe for shares means they own the share of company. It is managed by board of directors means shareholders are different and board of directors are different. Shareholders, what they do is they elect some person to handle their company, and those people are known as board of directors. In this way the management and ownership is practically different means ownership they are the owners, but management they're handled by the board of directors. So in company management is different from ownership. In sole proprietorship we saw that the owner used to handle everything, management and all, but in company management is different and ownership is different. The company has permanent life. That means it has perpetual succession. If some shareholders dies, then other shareholders can also enter in the company. Then the liability of the shareholders is limited to the face value of shares held by a particular shareholder means the liability of a part of shareholder will be up to the limit to which he owns the shares. For suppose if the capital of a company is 1 lakh and Mr. X he holds shares of rupees 50,000, then his liability will be up to rupees 50,000 because his face value of shares is 50,000. Now let us see definitions given by some person. Now according to Haney, a joint stock company is a voluntary association of persons for profit means voluntarily people come together, they form an association and their motive is to earn profit, whose capital is divided into transferable shares and ownership is required for its membership. Now transferable shares you know already, and ownership is required for its membership. So in company, in order to become a member of a particular company, people they have to purchase shares, they have to have ownership of some shares. Okay, now in the opinion of Kimball and Kimball, corporation by nature is an artificial person. Now company is nothing but an artificial person which is created by law for specific purpose or authorized means they form company for a specific purpose or they are authorized for a specific purpose. Now in the words of Chief Justice Marshall, a joint stock company is an artificial person. Now in every definition mostly you will see it is an artificial person. Now a company is invisible, we cannot see but we can hear about it. Intangible, we cannot touch the company, and existing only in the eyes of law. Now let us see some features or characteristics of company. Now first one is an association of person. Now minimum to form a company 2 persons are required or 7 persons to form private. Now in case of private company there should be minimum 2 person, and in public company it should be minimum 7 person. Now what is private company and what is public company, that also we will discuss in detail. Now a single individual cannot constitute a company. Then next is incorporated association. A company comes into existence only after a certificate of incorporation. Now in case of private company, what they have to do is after registration they will get a certificate of incorporation. Only after that they can start their business. And in case of public company, what they will get is certificate of commencement. Now remember that in case of private company minimum person should be 2, and in public company minimum person should be 7. And in case of private company what they get is certificate of incorporation, and in case of public company they get certificate of commencement. After only getting these certificates they can start their business. Then transferability of shares. In public limited company, that means public company, transfer of shares are free, means you can freely transfer your shares to anybody. But in case of private company it is not allowed. You cannot purchase or sell your shares. Okay, remember that in public company purchasing and selling of shares is allowed, while in private company it is not allowed. Then separation of ownership from management. Now ownership is different from management because ownership is at the hand of the shareholders. They are the owners of the company, but the person that they elect to handle the management of the business, they are known as board of directors. They are the one who legally manage the business. Now the management is vested by board of directors. Management is nothing, all those person who are in management of company, they are known as board of directors, and they are legal representatives of shareholders. They are the owner, and board of directors, they are nothing but legal representatives of shareholders. The board of directors have a direct control over the company, and all important decisions regarding the company are taken by board of directors. Now what the function of shareholder is to appoint board of directors, and the function of board of director is to take decisions of the company. Now fifth is artificial person. A company is a separate legal entity, means it has legal existence. It purchases and sells goods in its own name as normal people. Like when we purchase or sell goods in our own name, just like that a company also, it purchases and sells goods in its own name. It incurs expenses and receives income in its own name. It can sue and can be sued by its partners, creditors, or any other third party. Now this point is important because since it has legal existence and it is treated different from its owners or its employees, it can sue anyone or it can get sued by its partners, creditors, or any other person. All important documents of company bears common seal. Like for us, if there most of our important documents, it has our signature. Just like that in company also, its important documents has its common seal as signature. As such, the company behaves like human being, but it is actually not a natural person, so it is called artificial person. Now everything features is similar to a normal human being, but since it is created by human being, it is not a natural person, and that is why it is called as an artificial person. I hope everybody knows what is meant by artificial. Then point number 6, created by law. Now the company is formed, carried on, and even wound up by observing legal formalities. Whatever they do, they have to do in legal manner. The company has to apply to the registrar of companies of the state with memorandum of association, articles of association, and prospectus, etc. Now while getting registration from registrar of companies, what they have to submit is MOA, that is memorandum of association, then AOA, articles of association, and prospectus, and other related documents asked by the registrar of companies. Now this MOA, AOA, and prospectus also we will be discussing in details what are its what are these documents and what are the important information that they have. All these things we will discuss. Then after submitting all those things, what they do is they wait for the registrar of companies to check all the information, and if the registrar is satisfied, then he will give the company a certificate of incorporation, and after that the company is legally formed and it can start its business. After filing certain other documents, certificate to commence the business is received. Then next is fixed capital. The capital of the company is fixed and mentioned in the memorandum of association. Now your capital, whatever amount that you are fixing to be its fixed capital, that should be mentioned in memorandum of association. Now then this capital is divided into small equal parts, and those parts are nothing but they are known as shares, but in case of public company they are transferable. It may not be paid up capital of the company. Paid up capital means, suppose 1 lakh is the fixed capital of a company, and they what they did is that they have issued one in means notice that if any person wants to purchase shares of the company, then they can do that by applying for shares. Now after applying, what the company do is they give shares to the people who have applied, and they call up money. Money means the amount of shares that the amount of face value, the face value of shares are called up by the company, and the people who have applied for shares, they have to pay up. So that is nothing but known as paid up capital of the company. It is authorized capital means up to the amount which a company can raise from the shareholders, which the company has been authorized to obtain at any of its stage of its life. Means authorized capital has to mention in the memorandum of association. Then next is limited liability. The most important feature of the joint stock company is that liability of its shareholders is limited to the face value of the shares allotted to him. For example, if a shareholder has been allotted 10 shares of rupees 10 each, that means each share is worth of rupees 10, and a shareholder got 10 shares, that means 10 into 10, 100 is his limit, is his capital in the company. So he will be liable up to only that 100 rupees of amount. Okay. Then perpetual succession, that is a company has permanent life. The company has got permanent life. It goes on continuing in spite of the death, incapability, lunacy, insolvency and bankruptcy of its shareholders. Now if some of the shareholders dies or becomes lunatic or something happens also, then there are other shareholders who can carry on the business of a company. So in another way, it has perpetual succession, that means permanent life. The death or insolvency of any partner doesn't mean that the company has been shut down. Okay. Then next point is separate legal entity. A company is said to have a separate legal entity. It can continue business in its own name, means it is different from management or shareholders of the company. It has its own legal entity, and just like that it can do business in its own name. It can enter into contracts, transactions in its own name. It can sue anyone, or it can get sued by any other person. The company and its member are treated as separate individuals. Then common seal. Common seal is nothing but the name of the company. There will be one seal in which the name of the company will be engraved, and every document of company will have that common seal. It is like signature of a company. Anyone acting on behalf of the company must affix the seal of the company together with its signature. Now one person or one individual of the company will be assigned the work of making seal or holding that seal, because every important documents of the company will have seal. so it will be his duty to give the seal for only important documents. Now these are the characteristics of company. An association of persons, incorporated association means registered association. Transferability of share is possible only in case of public company and not in private company. Then management and ownership are separate. Then company is an artificial person separate from its owner and managers. Then it is created by law. It has fixed capital. Liability of shareholders are limited. It has perpetual succession, means death or lunacy of any partners doesn't mean that the company will be shut down. Then it has separate legal entity, and that is why it behaves like a normal human being, normal person, and it has a unique common seal. Now let us discuss what are different types of company. Now there are two types of company. One is private limited company and public limited company. First, let us see what is public company. According to section 3 subsection 1 clause 4 of Indian Companies Act, a public company is one which is not a private company. Now the definition is very simple. A company which is not private is a public company. Now let us see what is meant by public company. The provision restricting the number of shareholders, transferability of shares, and issuing prospectus applicable in private companies does not apply in public companies. Means private company, they have restricted number of shareholders, they cannot transfer their shares, they cannot issue prospectus. But in case of public company, they can do everything. They can issue shares, they can issue prospectus, they can transfer their shares. They don't have any restricted number of shareholders. Or in other words, a public company is the company wherein minimum number of members is 7 and no limit regarding maximum number. Means minimum should be 7 but maximum can be unlimited. Then there is no restriction on the transferability of share. Means you can transfer your shares to anyone if you want. And transfer means a purchase or sale of shares. Then maximum number of shareholders is not restricted to 50. Means in private company, maximum number of shareholders should be 50, but in public company it is unlimited. Then there is complete freedom to issue prospectus and invite application for shares and debentures. Means a public company, they can issue shares, they can invite application for application of shares. Now in issue prospectus means nothing. Prospectus means it will be a short document in which the company will mention how much amount of shares they are offering for people to purchase, and through that prospectus only they will receive application. Means people who are willing to purchase shares of the company, they can give application that mentioning that how much shares they want to purchase, and based on that the company can allot shares. Now some examples of public companies are Bajaj Auto Limited, Associated Cement Companies Limited, Oswald Agro Limited, etc. Now let us see what is private company. According to section 3 subsection 1 clause 3 of Indian Companies Act 1956, a private company means a company which by its articles, means in its articles of association there will be restrictions the right of transfer of shares if any. Means in some exceptional case private company can also transfer shares, but it is not allowed. That means purchase and sale of shares of a private company is not allowed, it is restricted. Then the number of members is up to 50. Then prohibits any invitation to the public to subscribe for shares or debentures of the company. They cannot invite application from general public for its debenture or its share. Now it is a mixed form of partnership and public company. Private company is mixed format of partnership and public company. It is also known as limited liability company registered under the Companies Act. It is necessary for the private company to use the word private limited after its name. Now Tata Group of companies, they are a good example of private company. And Bharat Heavy Electricals Limited, BHEL, they are It is a good example of public company. Now let us see special privileges of a private company. Number of members. A private company can be formed with at least 2 members, because minimum number in case of private company is 2, but in case of public company it is 7. Then allotment before minimum subscription. Now minimum subscription is nothing but the minimum amount of money which a company should receive before allotting shares to the public. Okay, so private company can start allotting shares even before receiving minimum subscription. Then prospectus. The private companies need not issue prospectus or file statement in lieu of prospectus with the registrar of companies. Since private company, in some cases they can issue shares, but not all companies, private companies, they can do that. But if any companies they are issuing shares to the public, then they don't have to submit prospectus or document of prospectus to the registrar of companies before issuing share. Then commencement of business. It can commence its business after receiving incorporation certificate, whereas a public can commence business after receiving certificate to commence business. Now private company, they can start their business after receiving incorporation certificate. That means the company has incorporated in the registrar of companies. But in case of public company, what they have to do is they can start business only after receiving certificate of commencement, even though they have received incorporation certificate earlier. But until and unless they don't get certificate of commencement, they cannot start their business. Now number of directors. Private companies, they only need minimum 2 directors. Then statutory meetings. Statutory meetings means compulsory meetings. Private company is not required to hold statutory meetings and file statutory report with the registrar of companies. Now in private company, they don't need to hold any statutory meeting, and they don't have to report each and every details of the meeting to the registrar of companies. But public company, they have to conduct statutory meeting, and all the details of that particular meeting they have to report with the registrar of companies. Then index of members. It is not required to keep and maintain index of member. Index of members is nothing but list of the members. Now in public company, they have to keep that, they have to keep list of their members, but private companies, they don't need to do that. Then next is issue of deferred shares. Private companies are free to issue deferred shares with disproportionate rights. Means they can issue deferred shares. Now deferred share is nothing but the shares which, suppose if the company has initially issued 1000 shares, and if some of the shares are not subscribed by anyone, then the remaining amount of shares they can issue again. Okay, in some cases of private companies, because not all the private companies are allowed to issue share. Then loan to directors. It can grant loan to directors without the permission of the government, but in public company, they have to take permission from the government first to give loan to the directors. Then qualification shares. Directors of the private company may not have qualification shares. Then age limit of directors. Maximum age limit for directors in case of public companies, which does not apply for private companies. Now to become a member of a public company, there is age limit for becoming director in public company, but in case of private company, it is not there. Then no restriction on the number of directors. Means in private company, the private company can increase its number of directors without the permission of the government. Means if they want to increase the number of directors in their company, then they don't have to take permission from the government. But in case of public, government permission is required. Now for appointment of managing director or MD, the private company can appoint any person who has already been working as a managing director of an other company. Then quorum of directors meeting. Quorum means minimum number of persons that minimum number of persons which are required to hold a meeting. Now in case of private company, only 2 directors they can do the meeting of the company. Then retirement of directors by rotation. The directors of private company need not retire by rotation, but in case of public company, the directors are retired by rotation. Now there are some examples of private companies and public companies in India. Then let us see difference between private company and public company. Now in case of number of members, we saw that in private company minimum number should be 2 and maximum should be 50, but in case of public company minimum should be 7 and maximum is unlimited. Transferability of shares, it is restricted in case of private company, but in case of public company shares are transferable. Issue of prospectus, the private company they don't need to issue prospectus or any other document similar to prospectus, but in case of public company they have to issue prospectus. Then allotment of shares, the private company makes allotment of shares after receiving certificate of incorporation, means after getting their certificate of incorporation they can start allotting the shares, and minimum subscription they don't have to receive for even if they haven't received minimum subscription they can start allotting share. But in case of public company, they have to receive minimum subscription, and after that only they can start allotting shares. Then commencement of business. Now business can be started after the certificate of incorporation has been received, but in case of public company they can start business after getting certificate of commencement. Then statutory meetings, holding statutory meetings or filing those statutory reports is not mandatory, but in case of public company it is mandatory. Then minimum number of directors, minimum number of directors should be 2 in case of public and 3 in case of private. 2 in case of private and 3 in case of public. Now remember that directors and members are different. In case of members, minimum number should be 2 in private and 7 in case of public, but directors 2 in private and 3 in public. Then retirement of directors, it is not necessary in private company, but 1/3 directors must retire by rotation. Then maximum age of directors, the age of directors of a private company can exceed 65 years, means even though if the director is more than 65 years he can still be director of the company. But in case of public company, if a director reaches 65 years then he have to get retired. Then qualification shares, they don't have to subscribe for qualification share. Qualification share, the minimum number of shares which they have to subscribe to become director of the company. So in case of private company they don't have to subscribe those minimum or those qualification shares, but in case of public company, in order to become a director, a person should have those qualification shares. They have to subscribe to qualification shares. Then consent of directors, no need to give consent by directors. Then in public company, directors of public company must have filed with registrar a consent to act as director of the company. Means to become director of a company, of a private company, they don't have to give in writing or a notice to the registrar of companies, but in public company they have to inform registrar of companies that they have become director of the company. Then share warrants, private company can't issue share warrants against its fully paid shares, but public company can issue share warrants against fully paid shares. Means share warrant is nothing but a written document, means in which it will be mentioned that person holding this share warrant, whether how much shares he is holding and what are the value of those shares. It is not required in private company, but in public company each and every shareholder will get share warrants. Then quorum, for holding meeting minimum 2% should be required in private company, and in case of public company 5 members are required to fill the quorum of meeting. Then minimum paid up capital, in case of private company it must have minimum paid up capital of rupees 1 lakh, and in case of public company it is minimum paid up capital is 5 lakh. Then legal formalities. In case of private company there are less legal formalities while incorporating a company, but in case of public company they have to undergo a lot of legal formalities for incorporation. Then special privileges. Some special privileges are given to private company, but as compared to private company, public company enjoys less privileges. Now when we look at the let us see difference between joint stock company and partnership. Formation. Companies, they are formed under Indian Companies Act 1956, but nowadays it is known as Companies Act 2013. Okay, and partnership, it is formed under Partnership Act 1932. Then number of members. In case of private company, minimum number of members is 2, maximum is 50, and in case of public it is 7 and unlimited. But in partnership, minimum number is 2 and maximum is banking 10 and other business 20. Then liability. The maximum liability of shareholders is limited to the face value of shares held by them, but in case of partnership, the liability of partner is unlimited. Then transfer of interest. Shares of public company are transferable, but in case of partnership, partners cannot transfer their shares in the firm. Then management. The company is managed by the board of directors, means those who are elected as board of directors by the shareholders. Every shareholder cannot participate in the management of the company, but in case of partnership, the partnership management is done by the partners, means they have right to take part in management. Then in legal status, it is distinct legal entity, but in case of partnership, it is not a separate legal entity different from partners. Then registration. The registration is compulsory, but in partnership it is not compulsory. Then implied agency. A member is not an agent of the company or any other member, but a partnership, one partner can act as an agent of the firm as well as agent of other partners. Then filing of document. The company must file a document of its final accounts and auditor's report with the registrar every year, but in case of partnership it is not required. Now let us see difference between joint stock company and cooperative society. Formation. It is company is formed under Companies Act 1956, but cooperative societies, they are formed under Cooperative Societies Act 1912. Then number of members. There must be at least 2 in private, minimum 2 in private, 7 in public, maximum 50 in private and unlimited in public. But in cooperative society there should be at least 10, minimum 10 members to form cooperative society, and maximum number is unlimited. Then objective. Profit is the main objective, but cooperative society's main objective is to provide service. Then liability. The maximum liability of shareholders is limited to the face value of the shares held by them. In case of cooperative society, the liability of its members may be both limited and unlimited. Then transfer of shares. Public company, they are allowed to transfer share, but cooperative societies, they are not allowed to transfer their shares. Then voting right. 1 share 1 vote is the principle regarding voting rights of company, and 1 member 1 vote is the principle adopted. Now in this case both the points are same. Then distribution of dividend. Dividend is distributed on the basis of shares held by the shareholders, means if a person is holding more shares then he will get more dividend. But in case of cooperative society, it doesn't matter how more shares are held by each members, all of them, they will get dividend equally. Then for today's session we will wind up here, and in our next session we will finish the topic company. Thank you.